Hi BookTube, I'm Celeste. Welcome to my BookTube channel. Today I wanted to do the classics tag with you, and the classics tag is one that I've seen many times on BookTube. Many of you have already done this tag. I think it's several years old, so it's new to me. Let me say up front that I presume we're speaking just of fiction novels as classics, not counting great nonfiction works, plays, poems, etc. So for the purposes of today's video, we are sticking just with novels. And I also realize fully well that I am speaking as a white woman, speaking about the traditional Western canon, which isn't always as inclusive as it could be. And in future videos, I really do want to address this. I've got a lot to say about books which are considered classics and the canon and so forth, so that will make for an interesting vlog as well. But for today, let's do this BookTube Classics tag. And as you can see, I have copious notes here, so I'm ready to go. I may be referring to these now and then. So there are 10 questions, and the first one is, what's an overhyped classic that you really didn't like? So this is starting out with kind of a negative, but let's get this one out of the way. I'm going to say, of the ones that I have here, it's a tie. Two classics that I respect but didn't particularly personally get along with are The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. Beautiful edition. So that. And then the second one is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And I know to lovers of American literature and classics, these two are going to be quite unpopular opinions that I hold. But in both cases, I don't know, I don't really get along well with mid-century male concepts of masculinity, the tropes, which to me seem a bit misogynistic, and particularly in Of Mice and Men, I felt that even though it was meant to celebrate a person with special needs, I think it was actually demeaning in a number of ways, and also I really hated the way Steinbeck painted the woman in this, the female character. Okay, what's the next question here? What is your favorite time period to read about? The first period that I love to read about is the Regency. And this is the complete novels of Jane Austen, by the way. So I love the Netherfield Ball. I love the country walks. I love the romance. I love the depictions of Bath and London and the seacoast and the Jurassic coast and all of that. I think it's a fascinating period in the development of culture and manners and the novel. And then the second one is a little bit harder to describe. Kind of the late Victorian period into the first part of the early 20th century. So maybe like 1880-ish to 1920, which is when the First World War was ending. So to that end, here, let me get this one. Something like Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles, which was, I think, the 1890s. So I just love the world that this evokes, the rural landscape and the woods and all of that. An agrarian economy, but also at a time when everything is developing and changing. So I love that, the latter part of the reign of Queen Victoria. And then I also love the literature of the First World War. One work that I absolutely love, which I consider a classic from this time period, would be The Return of the Soldier by Rebecca West. This is a Penguin Modern Classics edition. There's a wonderful version of this available for free on YouTube. I will connect the video below. It's an audiobook, but it's presented on YouTube. This is such a fantastic brief gem, and I really hope you'll check it out. I will go into more detail about it in a later video. Okay, and question number 3. What is your favorite fairy tale? I have so many favorite fairy tales, and that's going to be another vlog as well. I have a whole fairy tale collection, be forewarned. But if I had to narrow it down, I would say I've always had a fondness for witch tales. And so, of course, I love the Russian Baba Yaga. To me, that is just so incredible. The idea of a witch that flies around and has a house on stilted chicken legs, and oh, just all of the different versions of the Baba Yaga or Witch in the Woods story. So of course that's also going to include like Hansel and Gretel. There's a favorite witch story that my son and I also watch at Halloween every year, and it's actually one of the Scholastic books, children's classics. They put together an absolutely marvelous collection of 100 children's classics on DVD. Many of them are now available on YouTube, and I'll see if I can link the one I'm speaking about below. It's called Teeny Tiny and the Witch Woman. And so I just love that version of the witch in the woods, and the child who wanders into the woods, and the adventures there and how he escapes. So Teeny Tiny and the Witch Woman, Baba Yaga. I love all of those old Russian tales. And let's see. Question number 4, what is the most embarrassing classic you haven't read yet? Presumably this means what is the classic I'm most embarrassed about not having read. I'm not really embarrassed that I haven't read them. I just haven't read them. Or I was supposed to read them when I was at university getting my English degree, but didn't really read them very closely at the time. Yeah, there are lots of classics I haven't read, let's be honest. Most of Dickens, yeah, the major novels I've read. I read Great Expectations a long time ago, but that's one of the ones I want to read again soon, because I'm just in the mood for it. It's the right time for me to read that. I've also haven't read a lot of Elizabeth Gaskell, so I'll be reading North and South. I love the Cranford series on TV, but I have not read that one. So there's a lot of classics that I haven't read or haven't read to my satisfaction. So I want to revisit them and really read them in earnest this time. Okay, and then top 5 classics you would like to read soon. Okay, so as just mentioned, I will be reading Elizabeth Gaskell, North and South, and I'm reading that for Victober. That's part of my challenge to myself. And I also have this on Audible, so I'm looking forward to sort of going along both with the written text and the spoken word. And then, as also just mentioned, I'll be reading Charles Dickens, Great Expectations, and also in the month of October, I'd really like to read Henry James' The Turn of the Screw. I've heard so much about this. I know that it's Gothic. I believe it's not really meant to be scary in a sort of horror sense, but more just a spooky sense. So that's my wheelhouse. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then there are two giant books that I am looking forward to reading. One I have read, and I read it very closely when I was a young girl, which may seem like kind of a strange one for me to have read as a young girl, but okay, my parents had all of the Alexander Dumas books on their shelf in their den when I was growing up, and they were beautiful, beautiful editions of Dumas. They were all the same. They were all bound in this sort of silky greenish gray cloth, and they had onion skin papers over the illustrations, which were like engravings. So they were just a gorgeous set. And I remember my friend Mary McGee and I really got into reading all the Dumas books. And so I would really love to reread The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas. Now let me say that I do not like this cover at all. I don't know. I mean, I think it's trying to appeal to younger readers who have this on their syllabus for the reading year at school. And if you want to read a graphic novel of the adventures of the Three Musketeers, go for it. But I think this is kind of a dishonoring cover. I don't think it does justice either to the novel or to Alexander Dumas. That's my own personal opinion. I specifically wanted the Pevere translation from the French because I've heard that that is one of the best, and this is the Pevere translation. Now there is a hardcover, which is a gorgeous copy that I wanted to get, but it cost like $60, so I wasn't going to do that. So I did pick up this copy of the Pevere translation of The Three Musketeers, and it's one I'd like to get to soon. Dumas' writing is just so exciting. It may look really long, and it is, but his work is thrilling to me. At least it used to be when I was a young girl. So let's see what impression it makes a second time around. And then, okay, not for the faint of heart, but this is the last one. And I'm going to talk about this in much greater depth in a future video, but I'll just show it to you briefly today. That is the longest work in a single volume in the English language. My sister actually got me interested in reading this. I don't really follow TikTok very closely, but my sister had told me that on TikTok, the editor for Penguin, Henry Elliott, was doing a year-long read-along in 2023 of Samuel Richardson's Clarissa, or The History of a Young Lady. So my sister had very graciously gave me this copy, and the way she put it is that Henry Elliott is just so endearingly urgent and sweet and ardent about his love for Clarissa as a novel. So he has a series of videos and posts available on Twitter, on TikTok, etc. And in 2023, he read this and got a lot of people to read along with him. I also have downloaded the Audible version of this, and that has Samuel West and a whole cast of characters in a Naxos production of Clarissa. So we're going to give that one a try, if for no other reason than, hey, you would have read the longest work in a single volume in the English language, the longest classic. So we'll see about that. Okay, next question. Favorite modern book series, favorite modern book or series based on a classic. I don't think I have a book that I can name for this, but I would have to say maybe the 1995 Pride and Prejudice, which I'm sure many people have given as their answer, but hey, you know, you can't knock perfection. And that is the one, of course, with Colin Firth and Jennifer L. I mean, it's just so watchable, so endearing, so charming, so lovely. So yeah, the 1995 Pride and Prejudice. And then I would also add the 2007 Jane Eyre that starred Ruth Wilson and Toby Stephens as Mr. Rochester. To me, that was almost perfection. It was just so lush and showed the harshness of Lowood and the gorgeousness of Thornfield, and yet the austerity and the behavior and the harshness and drama of the Moors, all of that. And I thought Ruth Wilson gave an awesome performance in that movie. And Toby Stephens is pretty easy to look at. He's pretty easy on the eyes. So there was that too. I think it was just brilliant and I loved it. And again, that's one that my son and I watch every year at this time, especially as the days get cold and gray and windy. Okay, I think I actually mixed up number 6 and number 7. Favorite modern book or series based on a classic. I didn't really have one, so I had left that blank. And the next question was favorite movie version or TV series. So my answers of Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre were for that. So sorry. Okay, number 8. Worst classic to movie adaptation. I am going to have to go with, pardon my reach here, Frankenstein. And that is by Mary Shelley, of course. I don't know if I have ever seen a Frankenstein that I loved. The one that I thought was particularly dreadful was with Kenneth Branagh and Robert De Niro. I don't know what was happening in that. Some people say it was moody and atmospheric and brilliant and all of that. And I love those two actors normally in anything, but apparently not anything because I hated them in this. It's the only movie of this sort that I couldn't get through. So I don't know what it is about that production, but to me, that's the worst one. Now, in contrast, a really great version of the Frankenstein monster can be found in the series Penny Dreadful. Penny Dreadful was a series, I believe, on Netflix several years ago, and it is scary. It's horror, so it is not for the faint of heart. I made the mistake of watching Penny Dreadful episodes at night in bed on my Kindle as a way of going to sleep at night. Yeah, it wasn't going to happen. I ended up getting out of the bed and looking under the bed and looking in the closets and making sure all the doors were locked and all that kind of thing. It was just ridiculous, sleeping with the light on. It's scary and disturbing, but brilliant. I have never seen the monsters of classical Gothic literature so well articulated in all of their particulars. It was just visceral. And the Frankenstein monster in particular was my favorite in the entire series. Of all of the characters, I loved him the most, and it's because he showed his humanity and his heart and all the best things. So if you are able to tolerate watching it, it is brilliant. But in any event, so yeah, Frankenstein. And then What are favorite editions you'd like to collect more classics from? More of the Virago hardcovers. Because I think they're just beautiful. And they're a nice size. They're not too heavy. They're easy to open, and the print. What I like about these, actually better than the Penguins, is that as you lovely readers get older, you will find that your eyesight changes, and where in the old days the really thin 1,000-page tomes of the Penguin editions were just fine, and so you go out and buy tons of those and think you're going to own them forever. Your eyesight changes, and so you find yourself kind of, you know, like this and then this, and putting glasses on and taking glasses off and trying reading glasses. So having a slightly larger font is really nice as you get into your 50s, 60s, 70s. And that's another thing I really like about these Virago classics, is that they do have a slightly larger font, as you can see there. So yeah, Viragos. Okay, and finally, question 10. What is an underhyped classic that you would recommend to everyone? I would recommend A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This book is my heart. It is written by Betty Smith. It tells the story of Mary Frances Nolan, who goes by Francie. She's the protagonist. It's a Bildungsroman, my favorite kind of novel. So it is a coming-of-age story. It is set in the early 20th century in New York City. Francie grows up in an immigrant family of constant poverty. It starts when she's 11 years old, and it goes, I think, until she's 17. She's on the verge of adulthood. And it's written in a memoir style, and it is just so beautiful and so touching and hard. She led a very hard scrabble life, so it's hard to read also. But I was tearing up constantly as I read this. Francie is symbolized by the tree of heaven, and that's why it's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And this flourishes up through the tenements in Brooklyn, and it forms a canopy overhead. It's sort of a unifying symbol for the story, and just read it. It's wonderful. I love it. It's one of my top 10 favorite novels of all time. So yeah, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed my choices. I would love to hear about your favorite classics, what classics you've read, which ones you're looking forward to reading within the next year, and you know, what's your favorite television or movie portrayal of a classic, which ones didn't work for you, and so on. And enjoy your week. Here it's kind of rainy and dark and moody and atmospheric. It's a perfect Sunday for reading, which is when I'm filming this. And so I hope you have a great week, and we will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.